Some people feel misunderstood their whole life, not occasionally, not in one relationship, but everywhere, at work, in friendships, in family, even with people they care about. And often these are emotionally intelligent people, not because they're difficult, not because they're distant, but because they experience the world through a different emotional language. People often think emotional intelligence makes life smoother, that if you understand emotions, relationships should feel easier. But emotional intelligence doesn't reduce feeling, it increases perception. You notice tone shifts, you sense emotional undercurrents, you recognize unspoken intentions. You don't just hear what people say, you feel what they mean. And that level of awareness changes everything. What feels normal to others often feels heavy to you, not because you're sensitive, but because you're aware. Emotionally intelligent people live in the subtext. They notice when kindness is performative, when silence is loaded, when agreement is avoidance. They sense when something is off, even when everyone else seems fine. This makes conversations complicated. You can't unsee inconsistency. You can't unknow misalignment. You can't pretend not to feel tension. And when you respond to what's underneath, people get confused because they're responding only to the surface. Emotionally intelligent people often speak a different emotional language. They value clarity over comfort, depth over performance, honesty over harmony. But many social environments are built on emotional shortcuts, politeness over truth, avoidance over accountability, noise over nuance. So when you speak with intention, people hear judgment. When you pause, people hear distance. When you stay calm, people assume disinterest. Not because you're wrong, but because your language is unfamiliar to them. Over time, emotionally intelligent people collect labels. Too quiet, hard to read, detached, arrogant. But these labels say more about perception gaps than personality. Calm becomes cold. Boundaries become ego. Silence becomes superiority. And instead of being curious, people assume. This constant misinterpretation creates emotional fatigue. You're not just managing yourself, you're managing how you're perceived. At first, emotionally intelligent people try to explain. They clarify intentions. They soften delivery. They translate their inner world. They say things like, "I'm not upset. I just need time. This isn't personal." But when explanations don't lead to understanding, they lead to exhaustion. So eventually they stop explaining, not because they don't care, but because self-trust replaces justification. Silence becomes protection, not withdrawal, but discernment. Feeling misunderstood repeatedly creates a specific kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being unseen. You can be surrounded by people and still feel disconnected, because connection requires recognition, and recognition requires listening beyond reactions. Emotionally intelligent people often feel ahead emotionally, but alone relationally. And that gap between understanding others and being understood is where loneliness grows. Over time, emotionally intelligent people become selective, not out of bitterness, not out of superiority, but out of sustainability. They stop investing everywhere. They stop performing understanding. They stop forcing alignment. They choose fewer connections, but ones that feel mutual, where silence is safe, where calm is respected, where depth isn't questioned. This isn't isolation, it's refinement. Here's the reframe that changes everything. You may not be misunderstood, you may be misaligned. Not everyone is meant to understand you deeply. Not everyone speaks your emotional language, and that's not a failure. Emotional intelligence doesn't guarantee belonging everywhere. It guides you toward where you truly belong. If you felt misunderstood your whole life, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you perceive deeply, you process carefully, you respond intentionally. And that kind of mind was never meant for crowds. It was meant for clarity, for depth, for a few real connections. You're not difficult, You're not distant. You're not wrong. You're just emotionally fluent in a world that often speaks a simpler language.